Welcome back. We are following developments on Capitol Hill and a potential setback for the president's pick to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Rand Paul, the Republican chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, announcing he will oppose fellow Senator Markwayne Mullin's nomination to be DHS secretary when his committee votes tomorrow. Paul making that announcement after leading Mullin's confirmation hearing today, a hearing that began with this heated exchange between the two.
You told the media that I was a freaking snake and that you completely understood why I had been assaulted. I just wonder if someone who applauds violence against their political opponents is the right person to lead an agency that has struggled to accept limits to the proper use of force.
I think everybody in this room knows that I'm very blunt and direct to the point, and if I have something to say, I'll say it directly to your face. As far as my terms, the snake in the grass, sir, I work around this room to try to fix problems. I've worked with many people in this room. Seems like you fight Republicans more than you work with us. And as far as me saying that I invoke violence, I don't. I don't think anybody should be hit by surprise. I don't like that. But if I do have something to say, everybody in this room knows I'll come straight to you. I'll say it publicly and I'll say it privately, but I'll never say it behind your back.
Republicans control 53 seats in the Senate, but have just a one-seat majority on the Homeland Security Committee, which is scheduled to vote tomorrow on whether to advance Mullin's nomination to the full Senate. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joins me now. So you just spoke to Senator Rand Paul. What did he say about his decision, Mel?
Well, he was quite fired up. He questioned Mullin's temperament. He said he was not fit to serve in this extremely critical role, and he made very clear that he plans to vote no, at least in the committee vote tomorrow. Just watch.
We're in the midst, I think, of a crisis where there needs to be more direction from the top. And a guy who brawls, a guy who can't even say he's sorry about, wishing violence on me and really applauding the attack that happened on me, can't come to say that. I don't know how he could, from my point of view, be a leader of ICE or Border Patrol. I'll be a no. I don't think that kind of person sends the right message to ICE agents who the country at large has said, well, gosh, is there a proper use of force going on, or do we have to have more rules with our agents so we don't have tragic killings of citizens?
Now, Rand Paul has clashed with the president on a number of issues. He's also been quite outspoken on Minnesota in the wake of those shootings. So in some ways, not entirely surprising that he came out against Mullin's nomination. But again, just quite remarkable to see him coming out swinging so strongly against one of Trump's nominees.
Oh, it's just extraordinary. Let's talk about the math here, Mel. Democrat John Fetterman has indicated he may vote yes to confirm Mullin, which would effectively allow him to be voted out of committee. Is his fate going to come down to a Democrat, Senator Fetterman?
Well, in the committee process, yes, because if Rand Paul votes against him, which we are expecting, that means Mullin will need to pick up a Democrat. So all eyes are on John Fetterman, who has spoken highly of Mullin, did say he's coming to this process with an open mind. He has not explicitly said how he will vote. But, Kristen, I would also note, even if he's not able to make it out of committee, technically there are other mechanisms to force this nomination to the floor. So even if it fails committee, there are other ways to get this over the finish line. But again, quite extraordinary to see the Republican chairman of this committee coming out saying he's a no on the committee vote.
Absolutely. And just the fact that there's a question mark over whether he could make it out of committee is just a remarkable place. This is someone who has tried to foster bipartisan relationships. It was assumed he would sort of sail through the confirmation process, although also anticipated tough line of questioning from Democrats. What did we hear there?
Yeah, Democrats really wanted answers about how he plans to run immigration enforcement operations. And notably, Mullin really distanced himself from Kristi Noem, who was the one who was just let go from that role. And he even said that he regretted how he talked about Alex Preddy, one of those U.S. citizens who was shot by federal agents in Minnesota. Let's watch that exchange.
You called Alex Preddy, quote, a deranged individual that came in to cause max damage. Could we expect those kinds of quick responses if you are confirmed as secretary?
No, Senator. I have a deep amount of respect for you. We've had our differences, but I do respect you. I think I said this privately when we had a conversation. Those words probably should have been retracted. I shouldn't have said that, and as secretary, I wouldn't. The investigation is ongoing. And there is, like I said, there's sometimes going to make a mistake, and I'll own it. That one, I went out there too fast. I was responding immediately without the facts, that's my fault. That won't happen as Secretary.
And Mullin also said we need to restore trust in the Department of Homeland Security. So very clear he is trying to distance himself and win over some potentially Democrats in that room.
All right, Mel Zanona, thank you so much, covering all the angles there for us on Capitol Hill. Really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.